I'm Veronica Dudo in Washington, D.C. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, Meet the Press. The Holy Father holds a news conference as he departs Africa following his 11-day four-nation trip. We have analysis. Straight talk. President Trump targets Iranian votes interfering with U.S. operations. We're at the White House. Plus, a tongue of responsibility, a closer look at the immersion program for seminarians, helping them to learn Spanish. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. George. Our top story tonight. Earlier today, Pope Leo XIV celebrated the final Mass of his apostolic journey to 4 African nations. He encouraged the Church in Equatorial Guinea to carry on the mission of Jesus' first disciples with joy. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Sedegren has more.
Pope Leo's 11-day apostolic journey to Africa has come to an end. The Holy Father concluded his trip by celebrating Holy Mass at the Malabo Stadium in Equatorial Guinea, where 30,000 faithful welcomed him with song, dance, and waving Vatican flags. The motto of the visit, Christ, Light of Equatorial Guinea, toward a future of hope, resonated during the Pope's last days on the continent. In his homily, the Holy Father stressed that by deciding to believe in him, each of us chooses between inevitable despair and the hope that God offers.
If you are oppressed by injustice, he is justice. If you are in need of help, he is strength. If you fear death, he is life. If you desire heaven, he is the way. If you are in darkness, he is light. Our problems do not disappear in the Lord's presence, but they are illuminated. Just as every cross finds redemption in Jesus, so too the story of our lives finds its meaning in the gospel.
The Lord is always by our side to support and sustain us, Pope Leo reminded the faithful, and urged all to never close their hearts to those in need and thirsting for God.
It is precisely the Lord's love that sustains our efforts, especially in the service of justice and solidarity. He always loves us first. His word is the good news for us, and we have nothing greater to proclaim to the world.
Reflecting on the gospel passage where Philip the deacon baptizes a high-ranking Ethiopian eunuch on the road from Jerusalem to his country, the Pope stressed that the proclamation of the gospel sets him free.
I encourage all of you, as the living church in Equatorial Guinea, to carry on the mission of Jesus' first disciples with joy. As you read the gospel together, proclaim it with passion, just as the deacon Philip did. And as you celebrate the Eucharist together, bear witness through your lives to the faith that saves, so that God's word may become good leaven for all.
The Holy Mass was Pope Leo's last appointment before the farewell ceremony at the Malabo International Airport. Since his arrival to the African continent 10 days ago, Pope Leo has described himself as a pilgrim of peace, and his message of hope and justice, which is spread across 4 countries, Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea, will echo long after his departure. From Rome, Benedict Sedegren for EWTN News Nightly.
On his flight back to Rome, Pope Leo partook in one last press conference with members of the media. Francis X. Roca, senior Vatican analyst for EWTN News, joins me now to break it all down. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Veronica.
Let's listen to a quick comment from Pope Leo on the plane.
I condemn all actions that are unjust. I condemn the taking of people's lives. I condemn capital punishment. I believe that human life is to be respected. So when a regime, when a country takes decisions which takes away the lives of other people unjustly, then obviously that is something that should be condemned.
So these are some fairly strong words from Pope Leo, but not very surprising that the pontiff continues to call for peace. What's your assessment of his remarks, and have they changed in any way?
No, I don't think it affects his critique of the war on Iran at all. I mean, he says that he's against capital punishment. He could have said the same about the United States. He didn't. The specific issue was, killing protesters and so forth. I mean, he's obviously against that, but he didn't take the opportunity to say, well, it's a very bad regime, but still we shouldn't have war or something like that. He didn't do that.
On the trip, he visited Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea, both led by what many call authoritarian governments. Here's how Pope Leo addressed that concern. Let's take a listen.
So the Holy See, by maintaining, if you will, a neutrality and looking for ways to continue our positive diplomatic relationship with so many different countries, we're actually trying to find a way to apply the gospel to concrete situations so that the lives of people can be improved.
Well, he's certainly not the first pope to meet with controversial leaders. What message does this send to the world when we see these images?
Well, I think it's a reminder of what the papacy, but really any religious or political leader is supposed to do, is to talk to people. That doesn't, the fact that, Pope Leo meets with people who disagree with him or disagree with each other doesn't mean it's an endorsement. I remember shortly after his election last year, somebody was complaining to me that he was meeting Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And then more recently, somebody was complaining, he met with David Axelrod, the Democratic consultant. The Pope wants to listen to people and talk to people. He should be doing that. It can't be read as an endorsement in every case.
We're almost 1 year into Pope Leo's papacy. How is his relationship with the media starting to take shape, especially following this trip?
Well, he's kept up the tradition of papal press conferences on the return flight. This one was very short. It was only 20 minutes long. He's pithier than Pope Francis, who you tend to sort of go on and ramble sometimes, tell stories. So you got a certain amount of bang for the buck, but I was surprised that it was so short. Unfortunately, he didn't get asked about just war theory. That'll have to wait for another time. But he is being accessible to the press. He also holds these gaggles occasionally outside of Castel Gandolfo, which Francis did not do. So he's keeping up his back and forth with reporters, and that will continue to create controversy, I'm sure, from time to time.
Yes, I think we're just beginning. Francis X. Roca, thank you.
Thank you, Veronica.
President Donald Trump orders the Navy to shoot and kill any boat without hesitation that is putting mines in the Strait of Hormuz. He also declares the U.S. has total control over the critical waterway. But tonight, the extended ceasefire remains strained, and it's unclear when or even if the two sides, the U.S. and Iran, will meet again to reach a diplomatic deal. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Veronica, good evening to you. Today, President Donald Trump said that Iran is having a very hard time figuring out who their leader is and that there's infighting among them. And today in the Oval Office, during a healthcare-related event, he addressed reporters about the conflict.
But I also took a little break. I gave them a break. And remember this, I want to make the best deal. I could make a deal right now. Do you know that if I left right now, we had a tremendous success. It would take them 20 years to rebuild, but I don't want to do that. I want to have it everlasting.
Motor vessel Majestic X, we intend to conduct the boarding of your vessel.
The U.S. military seizing another tanker today associated with smuggling Iranian oil, the Majestic X in the Indian Ocean. The War Department released video footage of U.S. forces on the deck of the tanker.
We have a blockade that's 100% effective. And they're getting no business. And as you know, they're not doing well economically, financially. They're not doing any business because of the blockade.
President Donald Trump this week extended the ceasefire with Iran to give the badly battered Iranian leadership more time to bring a unified proposal to the table. On Truth Social, he said, when it comes to who is leading that country, they just don't know. The infighting is between the hardliners who have been losing badly on the battlefield and the moderates who are not very moderate at all, but gaining respect is crazy.
Morning, everyone.
Today, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries weighed in on the war. At a news conference, he said the conflict in the Middle East is not going well for the United States of America.
Billions of dollars are being spent to drop bombs on Iran. The regime is still intact.
And when it comes to nuclear weapons, as well as the Strait of Hormuz, he told reporters,
we have not decimated their nuclear stockpile to the extent that it exists. And the Strait of Hormuz is now controlled by Iran, which was not the case prior to Donald Trump starting this conflict.
And a shocking scene in Germany, when Iran's exiled crown prince, jockeying for a return to power in Iran, was splattered today with a red liquid, possibly tomato juice, just after a news briefing where he criticized the ceasefire between the United States and Iran.
The president also said today that our minesweepers are clearing the Strait of Hormuz right now, and that he's ordering that minesweeping to continue at a tripled up level. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining us now is Rebecca L. Heinrichs, Senior Fellow and a Specialist in Foreign Policy at the Hudson Institute. Thank you so much for joining us. While the Israel-Lebanon talks are significant when looking at the broader region, Iran has influence via Hezbollah. How critical are the talks today for U.S. foreign policy?
Well, they're important. I mean, I think one of the things that's good to keep in mind is that Hezbollah really is an arm of the Iran regime. And this is something that the Iranians have denied for years, but we know that it's true. And so the Iranians, the Rump regime, has demanded as part of the ceasefire that the United States essentially pressure Israel to stop its attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon, while there is a sort of to see if there's a moment where there can be some kind of agreement between the Lebanon government and Israel. I'm pessimistic that these are going to go well, again, because I think the Lebanese government has for too long been harboring Hezbollah and has not done its job in actually countering this Islamic radicalist regime.
It's been 30 years since we've seen formal negotiations between Israel and Lebanon. Why are they progressing, yet talks at the moment seem to be stalled between the U.S. and Iran?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind for the United States and Iran is because the United States and Israel has been so successful in penetrating the Iran regime in the initial salvo, essentially, of Operation Epic Fury, that the power structure has broken down. And so when Vice President Vance went all the way to Pakistan for these first negotiations, the individuals he spoke to representing Iran are simply not the people who have power over the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that militant group that really protects the regime. And those individuals have said they're not going to listen to the individuals who the United States delegates were speaking to. So it's a different problem with the United States in Iran, where we actually do know who is in charge in Lebanon, and those individuals are negotiating with the Israeli government.
The Iran government is fractured, so there's a lot of moving parts. What should the U.S. be prioritizing right now behind the scenes to make sure these negotiations hold?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is we do have to figure out who in Iran actually are the individuals who are willing to be pragmatic with the United States and who have the power to enforce these things. So it's really a waste of time for the United States to negotiate with anybody who doesn't have control over the IRGC, who continues to fire into the Strait of Hormuz. So unfortunately, I'm pretty pessimistic that these talks are going to bear fruit in the near term. The United States has another aircraft carrier. The George H.W. Bush is going to be the third aircraft carrier in the region. It's going to arrive in the next 3 to 4 days. I suspect that this increased military power moving into the region is to apply more pressure on this Rump regime. And if the Iran regime cannot put forward somebody who has the power to enforce what they say, I do suspect that the United States is going to restart military operations, and I would suspect that those individuals who are creating the problems and are being obstinate and continue to threaten the United States in the region will almost certainly be on the Israeli target list, because it's the Israelis who have been taking out regime leaders who continue the Islamic Revolution rather than laying down their arms and coming up with a more pragmatic way forward.
Rebecca L. Heinrichs, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. A step forward, the Senate passes a key budget blueprint to fund DHS. What's next? Right after the break. During the early hours of the morning, the U.S. Senate passed a budget blueprint to fund ICE and Border Patrol for the next 3 years. Although this is only the first step in an effort to reopen the Department of Homeland Security, it's major progress. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales was at the voter-rama, which lasted until 3:45 in the morning. Eric, what was that like?
Good evening, Veronica. It was a late night indeed, but we have to remember this is only a blueprint to fund ICE and Border Patrol. The actual reconciliation bill with the $70 billion for the two agencies, that'll be voted on in the Senate after the House passes this blueprint.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 48, and the concurrent resolution, as amended, is agreed to.
Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was quick to respond.
Tonight, Senate Republicans showed the American people where they stand. Not for families struggling with the high costs of childcare, groceries, gasoline, electricity, but for pumping $140 billion towards rogue agencies.
Now the House must pass the same plan. Senate Republicans will then use budget reconciliation, which bypasses filibuster rules, to pass the actual bill to fund ICE and border agents with a simple majority vote. House Speaker Mike Johnson is confident it will pass.
Republicans are sprinting to end the Democrats' shameless shutdown of our Homeland Security Department. And I'm relieved to report this is finally the beginning of the end of this.
Democrats say they won't support law enforcement funding without major changes to ICE tactics. House Republicans previously rejected a bipartisan DHS funding deal that didn't include immigration enforcement money. So will that bill, which will fund the rest of ICE, ever pass the House?
If we're voting to fund everything but ICE, which is originally what we had talked about, great. But, you know, we don't know what the exact final package is that's going to be on reconciliation. A lot of things are going to get added to it. So, you know, my hunch is it's going to be a Christmas tree they keep loading up.
Republican Congressman Ralph Norman tells me DHS is running out of money and Congress must come together.
We understand that's a problem. We don't want to bear the burden on that. We'll drive as hard a bargain as we can. At the end of the day, I think we'll meet the bar to get it passed.
Some House Republicans aren't so sure. They still want to add items like voter reform found in the SAVE Act. And some are pushing for a third reconciliation bill in the near future. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, report release. A survey polled more than 300 seminarians set to become priests this year. We have the statistics on this year's class. Plus, hear firsthand how one seminary prepares future priests through a unique immersion program. A group tracking trends among seminarians scheduled for ordination this year releases its annual report, and the results are surprising. The Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate says the average age of soon-to-be ordained seminarians is 33 years old. 300 seminarians set to become priests this year responded to the study. On average, they said they first considered the priesthood when they were 16 years old. 61% completed an undergraduate or graduate degree before entering the seminary, and 21% carried school debt at the time of entering seminary. 92% reported being encouraged to consider the priesthood by another priest, friend, mother, or parishioner, while 41% say they were discouraged from considering the priesthood.
Saludando con afecto esta iglesia particular de Malabo.
That was Pope Leo speaking Spanish during a mass earlier this week. The Holy Father lived for many years in Peru, and his ability to speak many languages, including Spanish, is inspiring others. This is especially true for seminarians from the U.S. and Canada. The Hispanic Seminary of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico trains seminarians to learn the Spanish language, as well as the cultural roots and richness of Hispanics in North America. The program began in 2000 and features more than 200 graduates from 55 U.S. dioceses. I recently spoke with a seminarian and a priest who are part of the program. Joining me now is Father Juan Vertiz, seminary's rector of Seminario Hispano de Santa Maria de Guadalupe, and seminarian Ramses Yates. Thank you so much for being here. So, Rector, as dioceses become increasingly more diverse, how is the seminary evolving its curriculum beyond just language acquisition to ensure future priests understand the cultural heart and spiritual traditions of the Hispanic families they will serve?
Yes, of course, we have a program that focuses on cultural assessment of the seminarians, so they can go back to the States, the United States and Canada, and serve different cultures there, but especially our migrant brothers and sisters that live there. Of course, they learn not only the language, but also how the church lives its faith here in Mexico, so they can take it back, that experience, and try to understand better our people there.
Ramses, can you share with us more about your background, having come from Washington State originally? Did you speak Spanish before traveling to Mexico and taking part in this?
Well, short answer, no. I grew up in Yakima, and while many of the people, other parishioners and friends often spoke Spanish in the school, I actually never had the opportunity to take Spanish until I entered the seminary. And at my other seminary on Mount Angel in Oregon, I took 2 years of Spanish, but came down here still not being able to speak much of anything. And more or less all of my acquisition has been down here.
And how has that been going?
Slowly. It's been 2 years, but now I can generally hold a conversation with someone that without a translator or without help from friends. There's still certain phrases and words that I have to ask for help and ask for one of my other brothers who are more fluent to kind of tug me along and tell me, well, this word means this, at least here and in this context.
As rector, how do you balance the academic requirements of philosophy and theology with the practical boots-on-the-ground missionary experiences that seem very important in today's pastoral reality?
It is. We here at Seminary Hispano have a program in communion with the Archdiocese of Mexico, which is our archdiocese, and every seminarians go either on Saturdays or Sundays to do pastoral work, either in a parish. Some of them, as Ramses, go to the Basilica of Guadalupe, and some of them go to some places to serve the elderly or the sick. So they are always, every week, putting the boots on the ground and serving others and learning to serve our people here.
Ramses, what has been the biggest cultural shock or spiritual insight that changed your perspective on how to minister to the Hispanic community, eventually back in the U.S. or Canada?
I think the biggest thing for me is just how many people are Catholic. In the United States, we oftentimes have to deal with more than 80% of the people not being Catholic, and so how to have a conversation with them. Whereas in Mexico, you kind of just have that cultural understanding, that cultural base of Catholicism that you can kind of start with and talk. And I think that's going to be one of the largest parts is taking back to the US, is that you have to somehow mix that in and figure out that a lot of people, a lot of the children, for instance, don't have that. Whereas other families, they'll be able to jump right in and you can start catechizing them because that's where their family is based in.
Rector, Pope Leo XIV is unique in history as an American by birth, but a Peruvian by mission and citizenship. How does having a pope who is a native English speaker yet carries a Spanish heart from his years in Peru change the way seminarians view bilingual ministry?
Well, it's a real blessing from our Lord, no? And I think it's a sign of the times, not to have a pope with that background, as you mentioned. And he shows us that the church has no frontiers, has no borders, and that there are people everywhere that need the gospel and need to hear from them in their own language and understanding their own culture. So it's a real blessing for us, for the church and, of course, for the seminary.
Thank you both for joining me to tell our audience more about this important initiative.
No, thank you, and thank you, your audience.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.